today, the feedback will be biased and mixed because of its color by the perspective of the person commenting. The subject feedback will either be in favor of Chief Harteau. Some, but not all, will be negative. So I encourage you, each of you, to remember the old saying, you can't please everybody. Instead of having the goal or the need to please, just remember, you can't undo 100 years of damage within 3 years. She has tried and worked hard to bring our community together with the Minneapolis Police Force. Janae Harteau has started a true connection within the Minneapolis community as well as the Minneapolis Police Department.
Thank you,
when you discover that you can't even please yourself at all the time, cut others slack. So I strongly recommend that you reappoint Chief Police Janae Harteau.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, and after this speaker, we have John Hartwig, and then Claudio Rivera.
Madam Chair, council members, I'm Andrea Brown. I'm the chair of the Police Conduct Oversight Commission, and I have authority today to speak on behalf of the PCOC to you. I'm here because I wanted to clarify for yourself, Madam Chair, as well as all the council members, that the PCOC did have a meeting with the mayor regarding Chief Harteau's reappointment. I made that decision that myself, Commissioner Singleton, and Commissioner Buss would be the ones to meet with the mayor, since we have been the only commissioners who have been on the PCOC since inception. We've had the most interaction with Chief Harteau from the commission standpoint. And so I made that decision. We did have a meaningful conversation with the mayor regarding the reappointment. So I just wanted to make that clear so that everyone can make an informed decision. Thank you.
Thank you so much. John Hartwig. And then Claudio Rivera.
My name is John Hartwig. I live in the Lake Calhoun area. I'm really concerned. 2,500 years ago, the Greeks of Athens organized the first police force. The reason they did this was not to protect the royal families of Greece or as a backup for the army. The reason they organized the first police force was to protect a woman. And yet 2,500 years ago, for instance, in this incident of Mr. Clark, he was in the process of slapping some woman around. He did it not once but twice, and in the process he lost his life. One thing is certain, Mr. Clark will never again harm another woman. All women are inherently beautiful, and some branded are more attractive than others, but the main line is this. The average woman, all she wants to do is raise her family in the best way possible, and yet time and again, and we've seen this for the last 2,500 years. This was 500 years before the birth of Christ that they brought the first police force into action. And yet today, women are being slapped around, kicked around, murdered, raped, and just about everything else under the sun. It's time to put an end to it. If nothing else, maybe we should go back to capital punishment. You hit a woman, you forfeit your life. Thank you.
Okay. Claudio Rivera, is that person? Okay. And then there's someone here whose name I can't read from Finer Meats, and then Meg Riley. Yes, sir.
Hi. My name is Claudio Rivera. I'm a resident of North Minneapolis, and we're talking about public safety, obviously, and I think it's very important to remember whose safety we're talking about, because when it comes to the Minneapolis Police Department, obviously Jamar Clark's safety was not being taken into consideration. The police are supposed to protect and serve, but who do they protect and serve? The function of the police is actually to protect property and the status quo. And let's not forget that there was a time in this country not that long ago when black folks were considered property, and police did indeed protect the slave owners when their property dared to seek liberation. So presently, as before, there's huge disparities in who owns property and who has the powers in government at all levels. And it's pretty easy to tell, color of our skin. And until those disparities are addressed, matters of public safety are in reality matters of maintaining a racist system of white supremacy. Further, we must address the cause of crime. Do we really believe that people join gangs for fun? Or is it done out of survival because there's no resources? The solution to crime is not police. It's resources, reparations. If you're concerned with crime and gangs and bullet holes, you should be concerned about poverty and systemic racism. So I oppose the appointment of the chief, and of anyone else that has no plans to address white supremacy and systemic racism that perpetuates and concentrates crimes in our most vulnerable communities. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next, we had a speaker from Finer Meats, but I'm sorry. Thank you. And then Meg Riley, and then Mr. Schroeder on Harriet Avenue from First Universalist. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name
Hello.
is Mary Beth Kenapa. Thank you for your service. I don't think you hear that often enough. Thank you, ma'am. I represent several different hats here. I've been a downtown Minneapolis business person for 53 years at the corner of 38th and Nicollet. I am the owner and CEO of Finer Meats Company. That's a long time. I have endured 26 different chief of police. The longest standing was Boza. Some have left in turmoil, and some have left a phenomenal legacy to this community. I think Chief Hartue is on the right track. Let's talk about my other side of me. I am a world-renowned author. I hold 16 U.S. copyrights. I have 3 provisional patents for movies. I've also distributed my books to 100 distribution centers throughout the world, and they've been translated into 20 different languages. I follow the money trails of the worst syndicated crime in the world. I follow ISIS, Al-Shabaab. This community is under siege right now, and I am thanking the chief for participating in the following. Operation Exile. She invited the city to take on the war of crime and drugs. She participated with international coalitions that include the Mexican government. She also worked with Interpol. She did an outstanding job, and she did it on behalf of the city. I'd like to expand that little thought going on to helping with the arrest of 29 people who were selling and distributing little girls from the age of 8 to 14 years old. This is a broad national problem, international problem, and she is strong enough to stand up to this. She pulled off the pro games here, the centerpiece of our community, without having a terrorist attack. She has also been absolutely encouraged every business person in this community to hold up and stand behind her. This is an outstanding achievement. I really strongly recommend that you take a look at the global issues that the lady is dealing with and what she is promoting for safety in our communities. Back in 1963, when I started my business, I couldn't get a loan in South Minneapolis for a pogo stick. Today, we have a beautiful, beautiful highway going down Nicollet Avenue. Thank you very much for the money, for your assistance, Mayor Hodges, to make sure that business community leaders have an opportunity to have money available. Thank you for having and allowing us to have 77,000 people show up for Open Streets. Nobody got hurt. Nobody was arrested. It was a day of tribute to South Minneapolis.
And ma'am, if you could wrap it up. Thank you.
And thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Meg Riley. Looks like Mr. Schroeder from First Universalist, and then Suzanne Holmeyer.
Hi. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. My name is Meg Riley. I live in your district in South Minneapolis. I am proud to say that I raised a child committed to justice and equality, and my teenager spent a great deal of time at the 4th Precinct in November and December. During that time, my teenager was maced too many times to count, kicked, beaten, knocked over, and is now completely traumatized every time we see a police car. Now, I don't lay that all at your feet, but every night I would see on the news the mayor and the police chief saying how perfectly the police officers were behaving. And here I have a kid who I am praying night after night is going to survive that night. I feel like there has to be transparency and honesty to say there are rogue police officers or what is going on so that there could be any trust. When there's just everything's fine, what it starts to look like to me is that the police union is running the city and not the police chief. I understand that it's systemic, that there's the city council and the mayor, and I understand complicated change. But there has to be transparency, and I'm going to join the people who say that you, the city council, who negotiate the police union contract, have to take responsibility for any police chief to do well. I join people who don't know if another police chief would do better, but I've spoken personally to the mayor and to the police chief, and I've been told to go to that accountability system where hundreds and hundreds of people have been told that nothing happened to them and have simply gotten more traumatized. There has to be something better. I lived here for 12 years, moved away to other cities for 10 years, and came back because of the transparency and the populism and the fact that in Minneapolis, I feel like we can make things happen. I'm still proud to live here, but I would be much prouder if the city council stepped up. Thank you.
I had listed some additional speakers. I don't know if anybody heard their name and if they're here. Mr. Schroeder from First Universalist, Suzanne Holmeyer. Okay, thank you. And if Suzanne could be ready.
Good morning.
And then John Martin.
Good morning. My name is Justin Schroeder. I serve First Universalist Church in Uptown Minneapolis, and I want to speak as a pastor this morning, and I want to lift the voices up of the congregants of color that I serve and the relationships I have with members of this community who are of color. And the biggest problem that I see is not so much with the work that Janae Harteau is doing or is not doing. It's systemic around our country, and it's the experience and the relationships that people of color have with the police, the anxiety, the trauma, the distrust, the ongoing sense that their voice, their experience, their concerns are either dismissed or ignored or, in fact, just discredited. And that is what most deeply concerns me. So I think Janae Harteau has taken some good steps with the implicit bias training, with the community relations work, and I would encourage the council to push even stronger for such measures that allow our communities of color to truly build authentic and meaningful relationships with the police in our community, because right now that trust is broken and badly damaged. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor. Is Suzanne Holmeyer here? And then if John Martin could be ready, please. If John Martin is here.
Members of council, Mayor. My name is Sister Suzanne Holmeyer. I'm one of the visitation sisters who lives on the north side in Minneapolis. There are 6 of us, and our whole reason for being there is to be in relationship with the people who live on the north side and to offer a place of peace, calm, reflection, and quiet. We believe firmly in civil dialogue. The chief has always supported civil dialogue. She's always been open to talking with us. The first time I ever met her was down at the farmer's market downtown, and I thought, this is my chance to talk to the mayor, or excuse me, to the chief. And unfortunately, it was not my chance because she was talking with 10 Girl Scouts downtown. And I think that was really important because I had to wait my turn. And sometimes we do have to wait our turn to talk to those in authority. But to know that they are willing to listen and to stay there until everybody in line has had their say is very important. I thought about what I was doing 30 years ago when the chief was beginning her ministry with the police. And I was on city council in a small town in Michigan. And I was on the police negotiation board. And in preparation for that, I had to read about community policing. And I think community policing is really the answer for our city. And I know the chief supports that type of policing where you don't only see the uniform, you see a person in that uniform. And on behalf of our monastery and the neighbors in our neighborhood that support the police, I want to say that I also support the reappointment of Janae Harto as Chief of Police. Thank you.
Thank you, Sister. And John Martin? Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, City Council member. My name is John Martin. I'm a regular community activist, community leader, and an ordinary citizen here in North Minneapolis. I had the opportunity to meet the chief on several occasions and kind of talk her ears off a little bit, but she has been a fine chief, always open to anyone, and I watched the chief closely. Sometimes you got to watch what people say. When she first got elected as actually chief, she said she wanted to open up her doors to the citizens, and that she have did. She said she wanted to retransform the police department. That she have done. She said that she wanted to bring people together from the community to listen, have an opening listening session, and that she did. I think that this police chief needs to be reappointed so she can continue the work that she have started and she have done. Our community need a chief that is more than listen. I had opportunity to talk to her and her staff. I always call her office. Someone always get back with me. The inspector at the 4th precinct is always good in getting back with people. Until you get to know the chief and start going to some of these meetings, she's a great person. That's a big job. It's a big task as being the chief of police. It's a big task for city council members and also the mayor too. But I believe that in my heart that this chief deserves to go back and continue the work that she have done, that she can do it. And I think that this city have made a great decision. And I hope they make the right decision to reappoint our chief. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That is the last person that I've had who has signed up. Yes, sir. Come forward then. Let us know your name, and then you might go and sign up there, and you can write your address and things there.
Thank you. My name is Jacob. That's easy to see you, Chief. I'm here speaking as a person of color who's half white, who's half black, whose grandfather was a deputy sheriff in Oklahoma. And the night that some white supremacists, were shooting guns in the air in the alley, one of the 15 of 18 days that I spent there at the 4th precinct. Second day, 4 officers came up to me, shook my hand, said thank you. Because I saw a big picture. So did they. When I said stop using your costume, start using your soul, I meant it. Stop using your costume, start using your soul. Because all of our souls in this room are equal. When you stop assuming someone else's position, then you'll know mine. Because I don't assume yours. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And if you would please go and sign up, then we'll just make sure we have a good record of your testimony. Anyone else who would like to speak who did not get a chance to sign up? Okay, I'm not seeing anyone raise their hand, so I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Then again, our action on this would be approving the reappointment by the Executive Committee of Janae Harto to the appointed position of Chief of Police Department for a 3-year term beginning January 4th, 2016. And I know at least one council member had a question or comment, and so maybe I will take a couple of those before I make the motion. I think the mayor also wanted to make a comment. So Councilmember Gordon and then Councilmember Cano.
Thank you. And I think I want to speak on the motion that you're going to make, but I just want to take a moment to thank everybody for coming and commenting here and having this discussion. I actually think the conversation about police relations kind of sheds a light or a window into the conversation about government and community relations. And it's important that we put out on the table, I think, that right now our country as a whole is having a really deep and important conversation, long overdue conversation. We're trying to figure out the connections between government, police, communities, and the structural institutional racism that's been plaguing our society and dealing with our history. And it's all kind of coming to, I think, a focus now, where it wasn't 10 years ago when I first got on the council. And it's great that that conversation came up today and some of those themes and ideas came up today. It actually reminded me of some of the meetings we held when we were looking at repealing some low-level offenses. And I think more today than ever before, more people in Minneapolis are understanding that not all of us have the same experience with police and with government, and that there are big differences, and that there are dramatic differences based on race, and they've had serious consequences in terms of mass incarceration and the way people's lives are going. And I think that's critically important. And I think I'm more hopeful because we're having those conversations now, and I'm actually hopeful about the police department right now more so because of the current chief that we have, because I think it's hard for people to change, and I think really what we need is a major change and a major transformation. And unless somebody's open to that, at least a little bit open to it and willing to learn, we're just going to be stuck. And I believe that the current chief is open and even excited about being part of that transformation and has been trying really hard during this first term. It's difficult probably when you've been trained in the, I don't know what the methods are. I'm not an expert in this, but the broken windows strategies and the code 4 and all these other approaches that we've used, and then to discover, well, maybe some of those have led to unintended consequences and we need to do something else. And what that other new else is going to be, I'm not sure what it is, but community policing, those kinds of things. But I believe that the department now and the leadership and the city council, more than ever before since I've been here and since I've been following it, is open to trying to figure that out. And I think the community is too, and there's an understanding there. And so I'm excited about that. And there's examples of how there's an openness, but I think a big one is that that we're asking for outside experts to come in and help us. So one of the things I'm also excited about is the national initiative, and actually the other work that the DOJ had done with us, looking at the early intervention system that was mentioned, and some of those things. So I think there's some proof that we have a openness and a willingness. I'm also excited about our Police Conduct Oversight Commission, the fact that they're taking this seriously and making recommendations, and the department's working with them and looking at that. Body cameras is coming up. So I'm going to support this nomination, and I'm going to support the nomination because I have high expectations for us to really get serious about figuring out how we can transform the culture and the relationships that we have as a government and as a police force with the people of Minneapolis. And I want to be part of that.
Thank you, Councilmember Gordon. And you're right, I probably should have gone ahead and make the motion, and I will. I'll do that. I'll make the motion on the reappointment. Councilmember Cano.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I have some things to say, but I wondered if we could ask the chief if she's available for answering 2 questions. Is that
Willie, why don't you go ahead, and then we'll see if there are questions for answering.
So, you know, this is my first time serving as a council member, and I remember the first year, 2014, we did a lot of work with our community to host a community forum where you would be coming to speak to the community about issues of public safety and community building. And you pulled out at the last minute, and you didn't come to that community forum, and it was co-hosted by some of my other council colleagues here. And so I wasn't happy that first year, and I was really put in a difficult position of not knowing how to work with you, knowing that my community members really do need a lot of support from the police department because of the issues we're facing with sex trafficking and drugs and the gun violence that follows the drugs. And so that was a challenging year. And I think that was a missed opportunity for the community and for the department to build a better relationship with the community and the experts that we had secured to have a conversation with us around these issues. And later on, time went by and we continued to work with the police department as best as we could, given the circumstances. And then, last December, I heard from residents that when the police department went out to evict the protesters from the 4th precinct, that people weren't given time to collect the donations that had been dropped off there. There was a lot of food donations, a lot of equipment, whether it was, to keep themselves warm and maybe some even clothing donations. So there was another question there about, what sort of approach and philosophy we are implementing with folks in our community who pay our salaries, who we are here to serve, who pay for this building and the lights and the computers that we're using. And so I was, again, concerned about that particular decision. But I want to talk about two things, and I want to hear your response to this, because I think this will help me figure out how I'm going to vote on this issue. And so two of the things that have come up for us that have been extremely challenging are, again, the sex trafficking that's happening in Minneapolis. The 9th Ward is one of the areas of the city that experiences this the most. And so a lot of women are being prostituted, and a lot of these women are women of color, low-income women, mothers and grandmothers of children in Phillips and in Powderhorn and in the neighborhoods that I represent. And so I'm curious to know what the department is doing to address that issue, particularly because we know that not long ago there was an article in the paper that talked about police officers who were essentially getting serviced by the women before they could, quote unquote, bust them. And so I want to know what your perspective is on this, what the department is doing to address this very serious, what I would consider cycle of violence against women. And then my other question is around ensuring that more police officers who are working for Minneapolis live in Minneapolis. And there's a philosophy or a way of thinking that if we had more officers who actually belonged to our neighborhoods and knew our families and interacted with our children in schools, that we wouldn't have such difficult relationships between the police officers and our community members, especially communities of color. So I'd be curious to know what you're thinking on those two topics.
Madam Chair, Councilmember Cano, your first question regarding sex trafficking. We actually are doing many things in that area, working with women from breaking free. Myself and the department, we view prostitution as, frankly, those are victims. Those are our women are victims, and we treat them as such. And so we have a significant effort with Sergeant Grant Snyder and others, and working with all the social sectors in that to ensure that at the first onset, we're making sure there's opportunities and places for our young girls and women, and that when they become in that place, that they are the victims. They are not the suspects. And we're aggressively working to prosecute the suspects and those who are trafficking women. We actually lead the nation in many ways on that, and I can get you some additional information. The second question,
The second question is about, what are your thoughts on encouraging police officers to live in Minneapolis or perhaps interact more in the community? Maybe it's a broader question, but living was the underlying point.
For the reminder. I value people that live in the city and think they do bring something to the police department. I personally interview everybody that comes through the door, and we are actively recruiting in neighborhoods. We're ensuring that our SROs, frankly, meet a lot of these young kids that we want to encourage to become police officers from right in the neighborhoods. And so we're not only aggressively recruiting, but when we do interview and we have people of equal qualification, I will always select those that are diverse and those who live in the city first.
All right. Okay. Thank you. I'm just seeing if there's any other discussion from council members. I'm not seeing that. Madam Mayor, did you want to make a comment? And Chief, you can take a seat or whatever you'd like.
Thank you very much, Madam Vice President. And I did speak last week at the first part of the hearing, but given the profile of this appointment and given the conversation that the community is having, I thought it was important to speak again. And thank you very much to all the testifiers who came this week and last week. This is the important conversation that cities across the country are having about the nature of policing and how we want to lead police departments and how we ask police officers to lead as community members in the community. I believe that Chief Janae Harteau is the right chief for the right time. That she has been very forward-thinking in many of the ways that we would want. We cannot forget that public safety is the charge of the Minneapolis Police Department. We cannot forget the numbers of people who come in when crime does spike or when they have issues with crime in their neighborhood, and the voices we hear from them. That nationwide there are trends about violent crime that Minneapolis has not been immune from, but Chief Harteau has met those nationwide trends with local solutions regarding hotspots and jet teams, long-term thinking about how to reduce violent crime, the partnership we've put together around the way regarding work with the violent offenders and how we handle violent offenders. And at the same time, on the forefront of people's minds is how do we do that in relationship to the community in ways where no one has a predictably bad experience with the police department, and that the mistrust in the community between communities of color and the police department is eliminated so that everyone feels safe and trusts that they can call the police and get the response that they need. And again, Chief Harteau here has been on the forefront, understanding that there is this mistrust in the community and setting up her entire administration, and she and I working together to make sure that we address that mistrust in the community and build it. MPD 2.0 is predicated on every officer asking